Hello. Take that off. Hello, welcome back to Oliver's Greenhouse. It's been a little while since I've uploaded any content. I was going to film some content this weekend and ended up repairing next door's fence, which blew over in a load of wind, and she's not very practical and needed some assistance, so I went round there and replaced the fence, which literally took 2 days. It was a complete palaver. I'm not going to bore you, but my spine is in pieces now. I'm not used to hard graft anymore. So in this video, we're going to be looking at some of the orchids which are just doing really, really badly. They are just struggling. Well, some of them are sort of like barely plodding along, but they're certainly not growing as they should do. And we're going to be using a particular technique to help sort of revive these guys. And more about that coming up very soon. So this weekend is going to be the final recording of my patron request video. I've already recorded an update on the bog garden I planted up. It's got that second wintry flush of new pictures at the moment. It's looking really, really nice. And we're going to be taking an extra long special look at all of my miniature orchids, the ones that are doing better than these guys, which are in the greenhouse. And that's going to be excellent. So that's a patron request one, so that is coming. But I was out in the greenhouse the other day and noticed that some of my miniature orchids, these are all the ones I got from Ecuador from the RHS Orchid Show. I mean, they were up against it anyway, flying from Ecuador to England to then be potted and introduced into a greenhouse, which was just about to go through the hottest summer we've had in a very long time. So I think some of them went from sort of, oh, it's so lovely here up in the high altitude where I get constant, you know, humidity and it rains a lot and it's lovely, and then we've come to the plastic box in my back garden where they get very good humidity and some neglect, and I think they've all just gone into stasis. So they're still alive, but lots of them have sort of gone, they grow and then they go and they stay like that for ages, and that's a sign that something's not right, something's going on with the roots, something's bad is happening. So we're going to be having a look at the sphagnum moss and plastic bag technique to try and revive some of these guys. And so anyway, I brought them in. We'll have a look at them. I thought we could unpot them because they're going to be all going into a bag to have some. I don't know how bad some of them are. Some of them look worse than others, and I'm assuming on that proviso that some of them will actually be in worse condition than the others, but because most of that issue is going to be subterranean, we won't really know until we get it out of the pot. So we've got some poroglossums, 2 poroglossums, we've got a Dinopsis, and we've got 2 Dryadella. The Dinopsis was like, it came, it was dry, I potted it and it just went and like fell apart basically. So I've got like 3 leaves left out of like what was 100 or something like that, and it's really like ugh. So we're going to be very gentle with that guy. If there's any chance of saving it, I mean, it'll be a miracle if we manage to save it, but if we do, then I will consider myself excellent, because I don't think we're going to. I think it's going to die. So what I'll do is I'll set these guys out on the table and move some of the laundry which is drying above my head on the Victorian area. If you haven't seen one of these before, they're great. We've had them in both of our 2 houses. They've sort of got these cast iron hangers, and then you hang stuff on it. And I can put it up just out of the way, and it stays out of everyone's face. So one of those, great if you haven't got much room. Okay, so I'll put these guys on the table, turn some more lights on. Not that one, that one. So it's pretty well illuminated. We'll have a look at these guys and very gently unpot them. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just some sphagnum moss. This is dry. What I do with any of the moss that I'm not using, I put it inside the airing cupboard down here. There's a big hot water tank in there, like a big pressurized storage cylinder, and it's always super hot. So if you're not using anything and you don't want to leave it all wet and manky, bung it in the airing cupboard. If you have an understanding partner, they'll be okay with this. And it just goes back to super dry consistency, ready for rehydrating a bit later on. So in the meantime, I'm going to get some of this wet again. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to use rainwater, because that'll have fungus, bacteria and, you know, spores and what you'd expect rainwater to have in it. So I'm just going to use water that's been boiled in the kettle to rehydrate this. We're not looking to root into this meat, it's just to provide moisture, but more about that in a bit. So what I'll do is I'll take some of this out of here and get some warm water in here to get this stuff rehydrating. Okay, so in the black tray I use for most of my repotting videos in front of you, we've got the 2 Dryadellas, we've got Cristata over here, and this is Puseola. Over the back we've got the Dinopsis, This is like part of the Masdevallia, and look at the state of that. We have literally got, I hope it's going to focus, we've got like 3 functioning leaves, and you can see this area here was the crown of where all the other leaves were, and they all died off. I picked them off, flung them away. These 3 are still surviving, so this I think is probably going to die. How do you enjoy living in Salisbury, Mr. Plant? I hate you. It's really not happy. Over here we've got Poroglossum muscosum. This guy is got a slightly red tinge to the stems. I'm not sure if that's natural. It's still green, it's looking okay, but it hasn't put any new growth, which makes me suspicious about the condition of the roots, because whatever's going on above is usually directly attributable to what's going underneath. This guy, this is Dryadella simula, so we've got 3 Dryadellas here. This guy is not looking good. See that red tinge? There is something going on with this. And this isn't just light exposure. This is tucked out the way, this plant, and it's sort of like rocking around in the pot, which makes me suspect root problems. So, well, I don't want to get these confused, so I'll do them one at a time. I think this guy here is probably not doing too badly, so we'll unpot this guy first here and have a look at the roots on that. And before we do that, I'll show you the things you're going to need, because I don't want to get these mixed up, because I'm very good at that, so I want to keep the tags separate. So we're going to be using the Sphag and Bag technique, and I'm going to get those items for you right now so we can see them. Okay, so a really important element to this technique. You can find this all over the internet. It's pretty much famous really as being a really good way of rescuing orchids, and this is a key element. So in my middle drawer down here I've got sandwich bags, Ziploc sandwich bags. These are going to be key. Rolling pin, don't need a rolling pin, I lied. A whole fresh bag of medium reclosable, resealable bags. They're going to be excellent. The Ziploc ones are the best. Ones, you know, the ones with the little zippy bit on the top, they're the best. But some of these you just sort of like, you squeeze that little hardened section together and they sort of zip together. They'll be absolutely fine as well. Right, on to the next thing. Okay, so that's the bag element all sorted out. They're over there. If I open this box up now, so I might make my life a little bit easier. How many plants have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 plants. That's one bag. That's it. I'm so bad at counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's one too many. I knew it. What we'll do is, in typical, I wasn't fiddling with that style, we'll just mash these, mash this extra bag back in the box for my wife to find in disgust next time she's making the sandwiches. There we go, in there, right. So obviously we've discussed the sphagnum moss. This is just soaking away in that boiled water from the kettle. Like I say, we want to, in order for this to work successfully, you want to minimise fungal bacterial infection. So those are those bits there sorted. The next thing, this is a really key thing, is rooting powder. So not sponsored by this company at all. This is just readily available. It's Sangral hormone rooting powder for use only as a garden rooting powder and fungicide. Contains 1 naphthylacetic acid and thyram. Thyram, isn't it? Thyroid. Suitable for all cuttings. Contains thyram to reduce fungal infections. Treat softwood cuttings, blah 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 blah. Made in England, so fingers crossed it'll work. Like I said, this. I think this was a couple of pounds, I think, if that, off of eBay, and it's come in a sealed container, so I know it's legit. Spreading mess everywhere. So those are all the things you're going to need: sphagnum moss, resealable plastic bags, and rooting hormone. The next thing we've got to do is get these guys unpotted. What I'm going to do, because the light's better over here, I'm going to move these things out of the way, and then we're going to start by unpotting those and having a look at the horrendous roots. I'm sure it's going to be horrendous roots. Okay, so this is not my favourite way of working. It's hard to see, to ensure that I'm keeping my hands in shot so that you can actually see this. But we're going to try very hard. And I'm going to do one at a time. Like I said, I don't want to get these guys mixed up. Really bad at it. So this is Dryadella cristata. Hopefully you guys can read that. And it's just in one of my little hanging pots here with some extra air holes drilled in the pot just here and here to keep that air circulation up. So I'm going to go ahead and just tip this guy. Well, straight away I can see there's no proliferation of roots into the media whatsoever, and there's a mass of dead roots just here, and a green thing. I don't know what the green thing is yet, so I'm going to just gently tease. This is sphagnum moss in here, just straight sphagnum moss mixed with grow stone, which adds a really good amount of air pockets and air, keeps the media fresh, allows air to move, because it's really important with these species. Yes, they like to be moist, but they like also to have good air, so a good air movement, and that's really important. I think in this instance, the likelihood is what's happened to these is they've basically come over from Ecuador on a plane, dried out horribly probably, had a real shock, and then what I should have done is bag them straight away to acclimatise them, to give them the best chance of adapting to the conditions in the changing conditions before actually potting them up. And instead I was just like, nah, sod it, they'll be right, and I just potted them straight up, and I don't think that was the right thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick all this manky moss out of here, because we don't want any of that moss growing, because what that'll do is that'll potentially suppress the growth of roots, new roots, and we don't want that. We really want to give these the best chance possible. It's not in a good way as well. I had dried della before, I had this very plant before, and I actually found it very robust, and I was wondering about growing media, because I was growing that plant in, I think it was just like a normal orchid mix, so it was fine grade orchid bark, and I think that was it, and it did really well in that. I had it for years and years. Needless to say, it did eventually succumb. I did something wrong to it, and eventually it's died. So if I bring this in so you guys can actually have a look at this close up. Hang on, I can't find my zoom button. Oh, it's all going wrong now. So there we go. This is dry della cristata, and you can see we've got this mass of just completely dead roots. It's going to be really important that we clean all of this off, pull off any dead roots, because all they're going to do is inhibit the plant basically, and it will potentially go all manky when they're in the bag, and it will encourage moss to grow and other filth and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this guy up, and we'll have a look at it again in the same view and see what it's like once I've cleaned it up. Okay, I've cleaned all of the manky roots off of this guy, and you can already see there's quite a difference. There's hardly any roots left on it, as I thought. Definite root decay. There are some live ones here, you might just be able to see by my finger that I'm just going to touch them. Those are fresh roots, so they are looking quite healthy. The rest of that mass was basically just all dead roots, and as soon as I started to see nice live ones, I've simply just stopped at that point, so I don't want to risk damaging any roots that are being produced, which are nice and fresh. So what we're going to do is keep the label with it, and we're on to the next stage. Okay, so the next thing to do is open this up and see what it looks like inside. It just looks like a slightly off-white grey mess. I'll put a bit on my finger. Hopefully my camera will focus in on it. There we go, it just looks like a grey, very fine powder. And this is what we're supposed to dip the plant into, like just literally roots first, like bloop, into it. I'm not sure about that. That has no perceivable smell either. I just don't know why I expected it to. Apparently a really good way of getting things to root is to take willow. I'd imagine something like Salix fragilis would be, crack willow would be excellent for it. And then putting it in a blender, grinding it all up, and it becomes like a sort of a green mush basically. And that is amazing at getting stuff to root with. So you use it like a little paste, dab it on a cutting, semi-ripe hardwood cutting. I wouldn't know about with orchids. This is all entirely experimental, but this is what I've read on the forums. That stuff makes me want to sneeze. Suppress the sneeze. Oh, it's gone. No, it's coming. Only one very unsatisfying sneeze. So yeah, use that as a paste on cuttings, and apparently that's like the best thing for getting plants to root anyway, or getting cuttings to root. So we're going to use that anyway, according to the manufacturer's guidelines, which is just to dip the plant straight into it. I actually don't know what I've done with it. Oh, there, it's over there. So what I'll do is move the camera over there where there's some better light, and we'll just dab it in there, and then as soon as we've dabbed it in there, we're going to put it into one of these bags, and then into the bag is going to follow some of this nice hydrated moist sphagnum moss, because the sphagnum moss itself has actually got a lot of antifungal and antibacterial properties. It's really, really good for that. And what that's going to do is going to sit to one side and just keep humidity in this bag whilst this guy hopefully puts out a lot of new roots. It's going to be a really interesting project. I think it's going to pan out well. I've got a good feeling about it. Like I say, lots of other people, more experienced growers than me, have used this process to great success, and I'm hoping I'm going to follow on with some of that success as well. Now, the reason I'm doing this, a lot of cuttings, it's very important what sort of time of year you do this, and because we've had such a very, very hot summer, and just from observations, most of my miniature orchids, especially these ones that come from high altitudes, tend to do all of their growing in winter. It's that much cooler, the humidity's like just 100% almost in the greenhouse all the time in winter, and they do a lot better and they produce a lot more growth. So this is, as far as I'm concerned, the best time for attempting this with these plants, because they're going to be in active growth. It's their natural growing season in the greenhouse anyway, so that's something to really bear in mind when you do this. Right, rather than dipping the plant straight into this pot here, I'm going to put some of the rooting hormone all over my worktops like this. Hopefully that will grow as well. I'm going to put just a little bit of it into an egg cup because it's got a much wider aperture, not too much, and I think it's going to be a lot easier using that than it is dipping it in that pot. Also, it helped with no sort of limiting cross-contamination. So I'm going to grab the little plant just like this, do it up closer like this. I'm just going to dip it in there like that. It's got loads on there, and then I'm going to give it a good tap off. Not with my left hand though, because I can't. It's way too cat-handed for that. Just going to give that a tapping off on there, and there we can see there is the plant, and it's all covered. Well, the bottom's certainly all covered with that rooting hormone. Now this has got antifungal properties as well, so I hope it's going to really repress or suppress any potential growth from any nasty unwanted fungus. And that's going to go down into just into the corner of the bag down here. Hopefully the right way up. Because currently it's not the right way up. It's so easy doing this on camera. I should do this sort of thing all the time. And I'm just going to squidge that to one corner like that. Come on, stand up. There we go. So there it is in the bag just there. And then in the other side, I'm going to grab a nice pinch of sphagnum moss. I've just squeezed this out a little bit as well, just to get rid of any excess water. And the other side of the bag, oh, I can't do it on camera, or quite close to it, I'm going to put the sphagnum moss. We've got the plant here and the sphagnum moss there, and that's as close as they need to go. Another really important thing to do is to include the tag so we know which plant it is. We'll just pop that in there like that, and then we'll just like that, and then I'm going to seal up both sides most of the way, but not all the way, so there's a bit of a gap in there. See, there's a little tiny gap, it's not quite sealed. I'm going to grab the sides of the bag, put it out like this, so we're putting some air into the bag, and then just seal it up. So there we go, one plant, one sphag. Okay, so it's only one pot down, we've still got a few more to do. I'm going to just tip all of this media out here. I even put orchid bark in the bottom of the actual pot as well to ensure there was air movement. It's not overly damp, it still crunches, it's in really good nick. So basically sat with a layer of sphagnum moss. What I'm trying to do is simulate a branch. So if you can imagine, I'm a branch, here's the wood, on top of a lot of these plants grow epiphytically. So there's the wood of the branch, and they're often covered by a layer of sphagnum moss like that. And what that does is it sort of simulates how they would anchor and site themselves onto a tree in the wild. But unfortunately, I just think the shock of coming from such a lovely environment onto like a plane for like 24 hours, and then obviously into a really hot summer in the greenhouse has just done them no favour. They didn't really stand a chance. So what I'll do is I'll move you down. I'm not going to talk during this bit. We'll unpot the others and we'll have a look at them. I'll show you the tag first of all. We'll unpot and we'll have a look and see what the roots are doing. If they're perfectly healthy, they'll just go back in the pots, but I've got a sneaking suspicion a lot of them aren't going to be. Okay, it's another really obvious case of complete lack of root system. I've cleaned this one up. There were sort of 4 to 5 really nice healthy roots coming from the crown of the plant. The rest of it is just a dead mass. Let me bring it over and I'll show you how little roots are left on this plant here. Oh my god, that's horrendously dark. Right in front of you have this other Dryadella, and you can see how little root there's actually left on it. These are all completely knackered basically. There's no perceivable healthy roots in there. There's like maybe 2 or 3 which are sort of pinky, not this like when they go all like, you get orchid roots are weird. They sort of have obviously an active exterior and then this fibrous material. When they die off, all you get left is that fibrous material. So there's another plant which is really mullered. So that's going to be going in the rooting hormone and then into the bag. This is quite a good comparison because it shows you healthy roots and not healthy roots all on the same plant. As I assumed, this plant, because of the way it was looking, at least had some functional roots. You can see this is a good root just here. And if I turn it over as well, nice healthy white wiry root here, and all these others down here have just died off and become nothing. So I'm going to give that guy a clean up and we'll have a look at what we're actually working with. Right, after a good washing, these are all the viable roots which is left on this tiny little Dryadella. There's like 7 or 8. Obviously it's in better condition than the others, but I'm still going to treat it in exactly the same way because a lot of as I was washing it, sort of fell apart as they do, these sort of smaller ones, and some of those have got no roots on them at all. So I'm going to give them a dusting off and with the rooting hormone and see how this guy gets on after a couple of weeks in a bag. Here's Poroglossum muscosum, and same thing again. All the roots are completely fried. It's got like no viable roots on it whatsoever. They've got that, you know how we looked at the Dryadella and they're all sort of white and fleshy and bright. These are what dead roots look like, all brown and mangy. They ain't doing anything, so we're going to have to get all of those off. Only one really viable root on this. All the rest of it was just anchorage, just dead weight. So that's all cleaned off now. We'll give him the same treatment, dust him off in the root powder, straight into a bag. This is pretty much the end of the video. This technique really is a sort of a last ditch attempt at saving a few of these orchids. They're very valuable. I spent quite a lot of money on them and it's worth, you know, trying everything to sort of get them back to a healthy growing condition. You know, orchids cost a lot of money, especially when they've come from such a long way away. And this is not a technique that I've tried before. I've heard and read many good reviews online. If I remember, I'll put some links in the video description down below to some of the posts that I've read about this. And one important aspect which sort of really was to put these guys on a bench, sort of, you know, out the way, out of direct sunlight, and sort of forget about them. You know, really just forget about them. Give them that time that they need to kick themselves into gear. We've got a very humid environment. The plants themselves will actually absorb moisture through their leaves, not just their roots. That's how well adapted they are. And the rooting hormone really is just a kickstart really to get them into that, oh crikey, I must produce some new roots. So like I said, tuck them out of the way, forget about them. I'm not even going to look at these guys for a week now. They're just going to be popped down on a shelf under the staging, and I'm just going to forget about them. And fingers crossed, those plants which are strong enough to make it are going to make it, and I'm going to be able to pot them up, reacclimatise them, and they're going to have a nice cool winter in which to survive and to to flourish hopefully. So that's the plan. So thanks for watching. And remember, this weekend I'll be going to be recording the rest of my patrons only request video. There's going to be a really in-depth look around the greenhouse at a lot of the miniature orchids. It's going to be awesome. And also I've got some announcements about Oliver's greenhouse as well, and where that's going over the next, I don't know, 2 years. So stay tuned. Don't forget to thumbs up, like down below if you've enjoyed this content. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this, and hit the little bell notification so you get prompted every time I upload. And I'll see you hopefully not in the kitchen again soon.